Tuesday, and welcome back to another episode of MSL Lead Chronicles, where leaders learn from leaders. I'm Mary Morton, and along with my buddy Chad Fellers, we have casual talk about the challenges and successes in medical affairs with the most exciting and impactful professionals in pharma. As always, we have another great one for you today, so stick around.
And welcome back to another episode of MSL Lead Chronicles, where leaders learn from leaders. I'm your host, Chad Fellers, along with my nifty sidekick, Mary Catherine Morton. How are you,
That's
Mary?
me. I'm doing great.
When's the last
How are
time you
you?
were called? I'm good. When was the last time you were called by your full name? I mean, do you feel like you're in trouble when I call you that, or what?
I do. It does bring back some flashbacks, but I would say the last time somebody called me Mary Catherine was you. You're like
Well,
the only person that calls me that.
it's a term of endearment when I
I know.
say it.
Or I'm
I
always
think
in
you know
trouble.
that. I think you know that. So, are you surviving? Heat index is 110 here. I feel like I'm in Austin, or someplace like that. I don't really understand that.
It's not
But
really 110. Are you exaggerating?
no, the heat index is 110. Just
Okay.
brutal. I mean, it's like Florida humidity with no ocean. So anyway, but
I'm gonna
it's,
have
you
to
know,
check.
we chose to live here, choose to live here. And, that is, it's something I wish, that AI could fix
Hey,
or things like that. Right. So, maybe one day I guess I could at least talk to my thermostat and maybe make it cooler. I don't have that, set up yet, but maybe one day, who knows? Right. So,
yeah, the Segway King rides again. I heard
I
you slip in
know,
the
I know.
AI there.
It's either that or dad jokes. I mean, they're not always good, but either way, I think it's just a good transition one way or another. So with that, I can't wait to have our conversation today with our guest. And so really from a leader's perspective around AI, utilization of AI in your corporation or your teams, et cetera. So without further ado, why don't you introduce our guest, Mary?
I am so happy to. So I am really excited to introduce everybody who may not already know him, Paul Minne. So I'm excited to have him here for lots of reasons, not just because of his expertise, but because I've personally known Paul for many, many, many years. Had the tremendous pleasure of working with Paul at a couple of different companies, and including the most recent company, Neurocrine Biosciences, where we helped him build an MSL team.
Mm-hmm.
So Paul is now chasing his passions as the managing director of Triple Helix Strategy. He works as a medical affairs strategist for organizations on helping build AI governances and frameworks to help them adopt artificial intelligence responsibly. So it's definitely AI has been like the hot topic for all of us lately.
Mm-hmm.
He has almost 30 years of medical affairs leadership experience across multiple organizations and building out several teams, as we've kind of already talked about. He recently launched something I'm really excited about. It's a Medical Affairs AI Playbook. Actually, I
Ooh,
shouldn't call it that. It is the Medical Affairs AI Playbook.
yes.
And it's designed to give MSL leaders practical, compliance-friendly workflows and validation procedures that they can actually start using today.
Mhm.
Paul is a PharmD that he got from the University of Colorado, where he's served on the alumni board and also supported the internationally trained PharmD program as well. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yay. So, for people who may not know much about Paul, we're going to give them a little bit of a glimpse inside of him via my oddball questions I like to ask people. So,
Oh
if you're
boy.
familiar, if you're familiar with the concept of a walk up or walk out song, what do you think yours would be?
Wow, you're putting me on the spot right away.
I mean, you don't have AI in the background that's listening to this and
Yeah,
saying
look,
and
I'm
giving
reading
you
it right
answer
now.
information. You
No,
can read it. Okay, all right.
this is all
Anyways,
in cold. I'm not
okay,
using
all
any
right.
tools.
Fair enough.
Well, I'm kind of the original alternative music from the '80s, like REM and Smiths and Cure. So I would probably go to like an REM song because, that's sort of my love band, and I would go to see them in a heartbeat if they ever got back together. So maybe something from them like Begin the Begin or something, but it probably wouldn't be the rockin' song that you're thinking if that's in modern, but it's just what popped into my head. So it's a great question and one I don't have a good answer to.
Well, one of
It's
my
your
favorite
answer,
are
so that was good.
yeah,
No, yeah,
yeah, and I
Well, it's
wrote it
not
down.
my personality to absolutely love REM, so I'll just leave it at that.
I know I
perfect.
love REM too, and one of some of the songs that I like Orange Crush, and Stand, but Stand would not work for what we're talking about today. Stand in the place where you are,
Right, right,
like, no, we got to move forward. So, okay, all right, good. I like your song.
100%.
Talk
Okay,
about transitions and segues. Holy cow, Mary.
hey,
Good job. All
I'm
right.
the.
Just
Yeah.
moving right along.
Yes, she is. Okay.
So, would you consider yourself more of a movie guy or a music guy?
Well, I didn't hear the worst word. What'd you say?
Would you consider yourself more of a music guy or a movie guy? Because that's going to determine my next question.
Oh, these are tough. These are, I prepared for so much other things than this. Wow. If I had to choose, I would probably say music because, I mean, I love both, right? I love, but I'm one of those that wakes up every day with a song in my head, right? And I listen to music a lot when I'm just, clearing out the inbox or in the car. The music's always on. So I would definitely say music.
Ooh, I'm
Okay, all right.
interjecting here. I'm interjecting here now. So, what song did you wake up and think of this morning when you woke up this morning? What came to mind?
Yeah, I'm trying to think what song it was. I don't recall actually. Sorry.
You're good.
I'm trying to think. I don't know. I woke up at 5:30 this morning and started preparing for this. So that's all
I
I
love it. I
that's
love it.
all I can go back to.
It's funny when you said that, it made me think of Groundhog Day, where every day you woke up with "I Got You, Babe" playing on
Yes.
the radio.
Yeah, the Sonny and Cher song. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So then, since you're more of a music guy than a movie guy, the question is: your desert island, 3 albums you could have, that the only albums you're going to get to listen to for the rest of your life living on this island. What are they?
Have to go with REM Murmur, which is their first long play. I would probably say Dark Side of the Moon
That's a good
from
one.
Pink Floyd. From I think that was 76. And wow. Maybe like Hotel California by the Eagles, one of those from the 70s as well. I'm not sure if that's the name of the album though. They might have a
It
different
is.
name. But I
It
would,
is.
there's so many great songs on both of those, on all three of those actually.
And I like that because they're all a little bit different. So depending on whatever mood you wake up in on the beach underneath the palm tree that you're stuck on for the rest of your life,
Yeah.
whatever mood you're in.
And
Okay.
I'll throw a fourth one out there. I was actually thinking Asia by Steely Dan. That was kind of my, which one do I pick? Because everybody knows every song on that album, whether you're a Steely Dan fan or not. But there's so much into, like what you just said, there's so much about that music back then that they just don't
Oh
do
yeah.
today. So anyways,
Mhm.
those, I could listen to those for the rest of my life. Yes.
Yeah. And for the listeners who or maybe are a little bit younger than the rest of us here, that is AJA,
Yes.
not ASIA for Asia.
Right.
That's a great one. And now I've got Steely Dan stuck in my head. Okay.
Yeah.
Last question. Secret talent few people know about you. Do you have a secret talent?
A secret talent that few people know about me. I don't know if it's a talent, but my hearing, other than just recently, at least when I was younger, was really, really good. I actually took one of those hearing tests where I was in a booth and had to wear these little special things. And it was just a regular exam, but I was in there for like 15, 20 minutes, and I had to hit this little button every time I'd hear a sound. And I was, after a while, I'm like, how much longer does this have to go on? And finally, I had heard a voice that said, okay, you're done. And then they opened the door, and this exasperated tech looked at me and said, I was trying to trick you the whole time, and you got a 100%. No one has ever done that. I don't know how you did.
Oh,
And I was like, I don't know. I heard all the tones, and they were high and low and all over the place. And she's like, you have amazing hearing. Anyway, so I told that to my wife, and she said, "Yeah, I don't know. You never listen to me." So
Yeah, and selective hearing.
so if I have a
Oh,
secret that few people know is that at least when I was younger, my hearing was I would hear everything, and I was like, I thought everybody just heard everything.
Yeah, don't whisper, don't tell secrets and whisper around Paul. He will hear you.
I'm not
Well,
sure if
I'm
that's what you
jealous
were
of that.
looking for, Mary, but that's what popped into my head was
No, no,
that's good.
that's a superpower. I mean, like,
Yes.
and I'm very jealous of that because I am like 80% deaf in my right ear, which is why I only wear one AirPod. I only need one.
ah.
So I'm very jealous of that.
She doesn't
Okay.
really listen out of the other, so, I mean,
What?
what exactly,
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
exactly.
I
So
pull that one on my husband all the time. So, well,
So,
okay.
but in all seriousness, though, I think I try to do a lot of active listening. When I ran a team, I would really try to listen to what they were saying, like not just obviously the words, but read between the line. Are they just tell me what I want to hear? Call them out, say, yeah, okay, yeah, that's the standard answer, but what's really going on, right? And so, if there's something that a lot of people would know that about me, is I really do try to listen, especially to my team when it really mattered, right? I mean, so
yeah.
that I kind of would utilize that to say, hey, if I have some good hearing, I can put this to good use as a leader.
So that actually is honestly, man, we're doing great on segues because what I would say about that is, one of the things that I think, whether we like it or not, uh, leaders are hearing, or their individuals are wanting to leverage the technology that's in front of them that they've grown up with. For in some cases, not every case, of course, the MSLs span generations, but especially those that are new to industry or relatively new, want to leverage the resources and tools that are available to them in other areas of life in this. And with that, in our conversation today, we start our conversations with key takeaways of what the discussion is going to be. So would love to hear those if you have them to set up today's
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah, I think I think the first one is MSLs are using AI, right? And we know that everyone's at a different level, but I think they're not necessarily waiting for leaders to say, "Hey, you can use it for this, and you can not use it for that," right? So I think that's one thing that we can dive into a little bit. I think also just have talking about how leaders themselves can be the ones who really drive that framework and that governance rather than waiting for the CMO to make a decision or whoever is in charge to drive this. Or a lot of people kind of defer to legal or compliance, and I would push back and say probably it's more along the lines of the MSL leaders hearing from their teams of what they need and what the low hanging fruit is, what's kind of easy to tackle today, and kind of drive that as the governance. And then, and I think, the big one I think that everybody talks about, and it's very true maybe in other industries, is the whole head count. What does this mean? And some people are afraid, thinking, well, hey, if we embrace this, well, doesn't it just mean that our jobs will go away or they'll replace us with AI? And there's some plausibility to that. I don't think you can discount that completely. It certainly isn't going to be tomorrow, probably not even next year, but conceivably in the future, maybe it's not so much that if you have 20 headcount today that you're going to go down to 10, but it could mean that maybe you don't expand from 10 to 20, and you utilize the capability of AI to keep the headcount that you have. So it's very much nuanced, but I think that's kind of the other key takeaways. I think, us in medical affairs, the things we do, there's certain workflows that AI will make it more efficient, but, getting in front of KOLs, building relationships, reading the room, those kinds of soft skills AI can't do. So there's
Yeah.
always going to be a need for that, especially on the field side, right? On the MSL side. So I think that's kind of the other big takeaway is what about headcount?
Mm.
Okay, I'm gonna jump
We're gonna
right
be good.
in. Yeah. Okay. So you and I've kind of talked about this before, and a lot around like the leadership response, the leadership preparation. Not necessarily the issue with the technology, but the adoption. So, and you said, in medical affairs, it gets kind of complicated because there's a lot of other influences from other departments. So I would love if you could kind of go into that a little bit more for the listeners who weren't on our conversations where
which
you're
was
kind of going
everybody.
into some of that stuff. Like, I mean, like the legal, you kind of like teased a little bit there, but what are the other complicated things that we need to be thinking about when it comes to adoption?
Well, like I said, I think when I talk to people out there and I ask them, hey, how are you using this? Sometimes I hear, well, we don't have a policy. We don't even have a approved tool. So we're not really supposed to. But I kind of do this on my personal blah, 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 right? We call that shadow AI, where you're using AI in a way that, your company hasn't approved. I think that's okay as long as you're not uploading any kind of, patient information or things that shouldn't get out there. If you're just putting some public data that's in there and asking it to synthesize it, I don't think that there's anything necessarily wrong with that. Maybe there's copyright issues if you upload a copyrighted article and ask it to, give you a rundown on it. You might be breaking a copyright rule or something. But the risk is low. However, if you're just doing that with AI, that's really not the best use of it. It might, save you some time here and there. But I think if you have an approved enterprise system, you really can do a lot more with it, right? And we'll talk about this a little bit later, but that's part of what my book talks about is hey, if you have this approved system, you can upload all kinds of stuff and save it, and it'll make your job. If you're doing something every week, like having a report that you're giving to your boss, you can upload all this stuff and just kind of hit go. And here's the things that changed, and every week you can have a new something out there, right? So I think that's the first thing is making sure that we have what you're doing is approved. And if it's not, that you're not setting the company up for any liability. You really need to make sure you're not putting in patient information or any kind of data that should not be public, right? Because the tools all use that information to get better. And if you've uploaded, here's our strategy for this new product, that could potentially get out in the public, which should not be good, right? So I think there's that. And I think so. The other part is what I mentioned before, sort of the whole legal compliance part of it. Sometimes leaders are waiting for, well, they haven't made a decision on this. And I think as a leader, I think, this is where it goes back to what I was talking about before. We need to be asking our teams, hey, how are you guys using this? I understand you might be using your personal laptop, but talk to me. Tell me what it is that you need. And as an MSL leader myself, I used to ask all the time, what kind of barriers can I remove from you for you? Sometimes it was, conflicts in the field, or it was, maybe their territory is so large or whatever. But sometimes in this case, it could be AI. What is it that you need? What is it that you're using for? What kind of things can we take away and make it better for you? You can take that as a leader to your compliance team and say, hey, this is what we're looking for. This is what we need for the team. This is how they're using it. This is how they want to use it. You can even draft that AI guidance yourself, right? And try to get that approved. So a lot of leaders that I talk to, like, well, I'm waiting. We did our training last summer, and now we're kind of waiting for the next step. And I would push them to say, you know what, you should really be driving that, and no longer wait, and go for that like low hanging fruit, right? Anything that goes external is high risk. Anything that you do internal, like a report, is pretty low risk. So if you go to your compliance and say, hey, I'm asking my MSLs to send me a report every week on ABC, and they could use AI to make this a 5-minute project and not an hour and a half. Um, Compliance, can you please approve this, right? Because where's the risk? It's just going to come to me. And, if there's something wrong in there, it's not like it's going outside the company. So anyway, so I think there's a lot of those kind of nuances that people are, kind of like waiting to be given permission. And I think I would say, hey, as a leader, you should really be driving that permission.
That's a really great point, because I talk to so many different people, and people are different. There are people who are risk averse, and people who are the opposite of that. And especially if you're in a situation where you're waiting for somebody else to give you the go ahead, or like you're in a meeting and um, we need to implement this. Yes, we do. Okay, let's do it. And then everybody leaves the meeting and they think the other one's going to handle it or write it, or I'm waiting for somebody else to hand the guidance down to me. I mean, how do you change the mindset of somebody who's risk averse to take the bull by the horns?
That was
Yeah.
good. Yeah, that was going to be my question as well too. I
Oh,
mean,
sorry.
no, no, don't apologize, and let me just expand on that as well too. I mean, um, I definitely think that MSL managers should be advocates for that, or leaders should be advocates. The question is, if you're in a company that is so where you can only share data for the first 6 months after that, and then all of a sudden it becomes reactive. Maybe that's an example, or um, it's reactive only versus like you're almost a field med info type of thing. How do you have these kind of conversations to instill confidence when the response is, well, there's no FDA or there are no guidelines or anything that speak to this, and we don't want to get any kind of sanctions, etc. So, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Well, I think the last comment that you made, I'll quickly address, and that is, I think the guidance is coming. It's never as fast as we want it to be, and it will have some answers. But like anything coming from the government, whether it's Health and Human Services or FDA or whoever, it's not going to answer everything, and it's not going to be
Sure.
definitive. There's going to be a lot of gray. So waiting for that is, it doesn't make any sense, right? Um, but it goes back to what I was saying before. I think people need to talk to their team. How are we using this now? Whether it's approved or not. I think they need to understand that. And obviously, if they're doing things that are not approved, you have that conversation to say, "Hey, you're not allowed to do that," right? Because that's not good. But there's probably a lot of good that people are using it for, and they need to understand how that is. And then also the barriers, like I mentioned, they need to make sure they understand, well, what's keeping you from doing this, or what would be a great next step if you could, make it even better. That's what the leaders need to ask those questions. Then they can go back to the people in house. And I think as a director of MSLs, I always viewed my job as really two full-time jobs. I ran the team, and had to worry about all the things that was happening in the field, and then also all the stuff inside, right, was the other full-time job, right? So anyways, you take that, and every company is different. Sometimes it's going to be an IT initiative, right? This is an IT thing. They need to set the policy. So you need to go to them and, hey, guys, this is what I'm hearing for the field. This is what we need. If you go to legal and compliance, the default is always no. So you have to be prepared for that. Like, hey, before you say no, this is what we need. This is what's going to happen. And I think what really resonates with leadership is when you can say, in fact, it was, I think, 2 issues ago on my newsletter, I had an individual talk about the patient hour. And his whole point was like, hey, great, you're using AI and it's saving you an hour a week. What are you doing with that hour? And his whole point was maybe we give that to patients. Like, how can we make their
Mhm.
lives better? Right. So I think you go to your leadership with, hey, you know what? My MSLs, because they're doing this, are saving an hour or two every week. Well, maybe they could actually see one more KOL that week, right? And that resonates a lot with
Yeah.
leadership, right? Really, we could actually have a lot more, impact. But it could also be something as, hey, you know what? That we have all these projects, something that you mentioned, Mary, where we have all these decisions that we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and then everybody thinks someone else is doing it. Well, now we maybe have, if you have a team of 10 and they all have an extra hour a week, that's 10 hours a week to work on a project that you maybe didn't have before. So I think that's the approach, right? You say, hey, look, this is what we need. These are some of the guidelines I think about, some of the barriers we need to remove. And this is the impact it's going to have. We're going to have more time for these other, hey, we're paying you to be in the field to see KOLs. You can push that as a leader. How can leadership say, no, that's a terrible idea. We want them, spending more time in front of their computer, typing away, whatever it is that AI can help them with.
That's really fair. Okay, so I think um, from just our conversation, your teams in the past, you had the approach where they had full trust in you and could be transparent and things like that. And there are many that are leading teams that are that way. But what if you ask that question and you don't really get a response, like how AI is being utilized? So, are there certain signs that one can see that your team is actually utilizing it without any guidance? Would love to hear more on your thoughts about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think first of all, that's a trust issue, right? If your team doesn't trust you, And that's a whole nother podcast.
Well,
But
it's more
yeah,
of fear, not necessarily, but even like if companies have not incorporated it yet, right, and very slow in doing it, but there are things that feel like they're safeguarded that they want to go ahead and step out, like it's rewriting an email or how do I respond to this, something even that simple and innocent.
yeah,
um, there could still be this hesitation of, well, um, I don't know how the company will respond. I know I feel comfortable with my boss, but I don't know how
yeah.
they might respond as he or she's having those conversations. So, um,
Well,
just curious if there were any signs that you could see, hey, this person is actually utilizing it in your experience.
yeah, I don't know if I have the magic 8 ball to look into and say, hey, this is what's going on. I mean, there's always signs sometimes with way AI writes that you can tell this was AI derived, and those kinds of things, right? I mean, I think that some stuff is obvious, but I think as a leader though, you approach it from maybe the best way is not to say in front of everybody at a meeting, hey, everybody, I want to hear how you're using AI, because then to your point, a lot of people are going to shut down and not really be honest because they don't want to get in trouble. But when you're one on one with them, you can frame it in a way to say, "Hey, look, it's okay that you're using it." The MSL job changes all the time, right? When I first started late last century, it was a way different job, right? We used to do dine and dashes and all kinds of non-compliant things today, right? And it's no different today. AI is just one of those pieces that's making the job change. And so I think as a leader, you have to recognize and say, "Hey, you know, yeah, there's some things that we don't want to do with AI, but there's a lot of stuff that we could do." And let's face it, the people we hire are smart and they figure out ways to make AI work for them. And as a leader, that's the approach you need to take and say, hey, look, it's fine you're using it. I just want to understand because I want to make sure that we evolve with this and that we're not left in the dark. So as far as
Yeah.
signs, I think you can tell if someone's kind of like, well, I don't really do this, or I mean, as a good leader, you'd be able to know if someone's not, telling you the truth or not. But I think it's your approach, right?
Yeah.
You definitely need to make sure that you're setting it up with the individuals to say, I'm not here to be the police. I'm not here to make you feel bad about it. I really want to understand this because we're gonna put a policy together. We're gonna do this and whatever. So you need to make sure that you're kind of approaching it in that stepwise fashion. And then of
All
course
right.
at some point you can maybe come back to the whole team and say, hey, you know what? I talked to all of you guys. You probably all talked together and knew I was asking these same questions. Well, here's the themes I heard. Right. And then here's the things I'm going to take to legal and compliance and IT. And these are the things we're going to try to make better for you guys. And you evolve with the role as AI is changing it.
It's like any best practice type of workshop that you would do or things like that, sharing. It's just more on the focus of AI. Okay, so let's talk about what good AI judgment looks like in the field. So, what are your thoughts on that particular topic?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing right now is anything that goes external really needs a bigger governance and guardrails, right? Because even if it's, if you're drafting an email to a new thought leader that just says, "Hey, can I come meet with you?" There's not a lot of risk there. But if you have an email that's going out to a thought leader with some data in it,
Hmm.
or maybe you're not even an MSL, maybe you're a med info specialist and you're drafting an SRL or something like that. Anything that's going to go external has to have a bunch of guardrails and really a workflow around it, right? So when you think about what does good judgment look like, and like I said before, anything internal, the risk is really small, right? So if you're trying to find ways to implement AI in a safe way, choose all those internal ones first, right? Those are the ones where the risk is so low that even if you send out something that isn't quite right or someone says, "Oh, it looks like AI drafted this," the only person maybe is your partner who, is also presenting this to marketing or whatever, right? That's the person you got to come to and say, "Oh, hold on a second, maybe this isn't quite right." If it goes outside the company, though, that's a whole different ball game. And so that's what I mean by if we're looking at where the judgment is, it starts with that internal versus external. From there, if it's external, I think the one thing, and I talk about this in my playbook too, is what the playbook is designed for is to not replace your judgment. And I think we all have to keep that in mind that AI is smart, but it's only as smart as we provide all the info to
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't replace our judgment at all. So if you do have a governance around, hey, you can craft a data driven message to your KOL. If you just take the output and cut and paste it in an email and never read it, that's not good judgment at all. So you
Yeah.
do have to look at things and read it and maybe double verify that the citation it's quoting is the right one before you send it to KOL. So once you ruin that relationship with the KOL and send them something wrong, you're done,
Just fix
right?
one time. Yeah. Just
Yeah.
fix one. Yeah.
So we talk a lot about AI, like creating or drafting things, but as we were talking about before we started the episode, this episode is sponsored by Whisperflow because we've been talking about Whisperflow. No, I'm just kidding. Whisperflow, send us some
I
money.
love that.
We were pitching you. We were pitching you. No, but AI comes in lots of forms, not just creation of things. And one thing I would love to get your thoughts on is AI recording devices because it wasn't really anything I had thought about before, but I did learn of an MSL recently losing his or her job because he or she had like recorded a conversation, a KOL interaction, um, and then not nefariously, but thought it would be an efficient use of AI, and used it to transcribe and record and summarize the notes and things like that. But the company did not have a a guidance or a policy one way or the other on that. It's this. Um, so what what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, just from what you told me, it sounds like it may not have been fair to let her or him go because if there was no policy in place, it seems like it was, maybe a little premature. But yes, I think we all tend to think of AI as putting in questions and asking it to do this, that, and the other thing. But AI comes in all shapes and sizes, and like you mentioned, one of them is voice to text. And, on the surface, what this MSL did seems very efficient, right? Why wouldn't you want to do this? Because then it's already they got a nice transcript. If you kind of go back and remember what did this person say, it's all right there. Now there's other issues, right? Now some states don't allow conversations to be recorded unless both parties agree to it. So again, it goes back to there definitely needs to be a policy in place, and you definitely would have to ask the other person, "Do you mind if I record this?" Most KOLs, I bet, would say no, right? Because they don't want to be misquoted or something. Who knows? But anyways, but yeah, but there are other ways of looking at AI besides just like using it as a prompt and like summarize this for me. The voice to text we were talking about right before we started this. Whisper Flow, as you mentioned, is awesome in that it is a great voice to text tool. It's AI. It takes all the ums and uhs out and all the repeat words and all this kind of stuff, and it creates a really nice written um, uh, paragraph or sentences of what you're saying, right? So why wouldn't you want to use something like that when you're crafting emails or drafting a document or whatever it is that you're doing? If it saves you time, I mean, for me, that's a really perfect low risk use of AI. Recording conversations is certainly something else, though. So we'd have to be careful with that.
So would you agree then that companies this is a real thing that happens? Like I was at at the MAPS meeting recently, and this guy pulled out his Plod. If you're familiar with Plod,
Huh?
it's like you can attach it to your phone or what. Anyway, um, so MSLs are out there using devices like these, whether they're using them at conferences or in KOL meetings. That you know, how essential from a legal standpoint do you think it is for these companies to put some sort of guidance in one way or the other
Yeah.
about if you can use it, how you can use it, or not? I mean, to keep people out of FDA
Yeah,
jail or
well, I
whatever.
mean, the answer is obvious. Like they definitely need to have a policy. In fact, most of the companies I've worked in the past would say they prohibit it. Right? It was like we
Yeah.
can't record conversations with KOLs. So I think that's a really easy SOP to create, right? So now, if we want to change that and say, hey, we have this really nice tool now, that could do this nice voice to text. Okay, well, I mean, again, as a leader, you could drive that if you have a nice business case. I think where the bottleneck would be, though, after you got that approved, would be I don't know that there's a lot of KOLs that would necessarily agree to that.
Right.
Maybe, right? But I mean, there's a lot of times that KOLs say things where they're like, "Hey, between you and me, right?" Or, I think this, but they would be devastated if they found out that this what they said, is out there on some server. Maybe something that they don't really want to be, known for or whatever. So
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, the bottleneck would be that I don't see a lot of KOLs agreeing to be recorded.
Here's where I think it could really fit in nicely. It would have to have access to internal, um, approved resources, things that can be shared, et cetera. But everybody talks about advancing the scientific journey, or how are you accelerating the scientific journey for a KOL? What's the next conversation supposed to look like? Things like that. What would be great? Or have you had any experience, or is that an area that you have thoughts on regarding incorporating feedback? So maybe it is like, hey, I reviewed, or in my conversation with this doctor, we went through this resource and talked about this. There was hesitation here, or there was really an acceptance. So it's almost like you're recording insights just to inform your next conversations and how to help shape and move things along. Um, I think that could be a great tool. But what are your thoughts on that? Is that something that's viable, or anything that you've seen in play yet?
I haven't seen anything specific in play, but yes, I think it's a great use, right? And good MSLs do that anyways. That and they have like, well, last time we talked about this, or 6 months ago we mentioned that, or whatever. So you're always bringing those things back in, and if you're doing it right, that's what you're incorporating all that, right? But yes, if there was a tool that could do that for you, that would be awesome. I think that's a really good use of it. At the end of the day, though, we can't record the conversation and plug it in, but you can take your notes and say, "Hey,
That's right. The
here's the
notes.
5 or
Yep.
6 things that we talked about, or, his beliefs in this, he thinks this, he thinks that, or she, won't use it for this patient population," whatever. You could upload those kinds of things into it,
Yep.
and that can help frame it for you so that you can, come back and say, "Hey, all right, well, what I'm trying to do is get this person to really see the light on this new data point, and I've tried all these things. What else can I do?" Right? I think that's an amazing of AI, and it could definitely help you with that. But I don't know if there's any viable tools out there yet. I mean, probably on the horizon. I just maybe like Viva CRM, the Vault, or whatever it's called, their AI system maybe can do some of that stuff, but I'm just not familiar with it as much. But it definitely is a place that MSLs should be really looking at ways of using it to help with
So
that thing.
you talked about, okay, so let's talk about ways that you think the MSLs can, say they have a KOL meeting that's coming up next week. What's an appropriate way in your mind to use AI to help prepare?
Yeah. There's actually a prompt in my book that talks about that, and it has all the guardrails and governance around it. But it actually, I mean, there's two things. There's one that talks about I've seen this guy, 500 times. What possibly can I bring to him this time, right? And then the other one is, hey, we have this new data. How do I prepare for that kind of thing? So there's a couple of different scenarios. Could also be a new KOL, right, that I've never met before, and how do I prep for that? So the playbook actually has prompts for all those scenarios, and all the different use cases and all that kind of stuff. It walks through it all.
That's perfect.
But
And that was
yeah,
yeah, that was what I was getting at, honestly, with the scientific journey, because there's so many that will say, especially, yeah, they're MSLs. Well, I don't have anything new to talk about, and at some point, new data runs dry. So how do you continue on and things like? I love that you've addressed that as one of the prompts,
yeah,
or within your book.
So, um, I was curious because this example actually just came up last week before last somebody told me. Because I'm curious if the playbook addresses like how to validate
mhm,
things that AI generates. The example I'll just give you real quick is person I was talking to, they were working on something related to a publication, and they were trying to find information on one of the citations um, for that publication. And so they put the citation, and it completely fabricated. I don't know. I don't want to blame a particular LLM because I don't know which one it was.
Oh, they
Completely
all do.
fabricated a New England Journal publication. Completely fabricated it.
Mhm.
So if it could do that, I know. Is your mind blown there?
Wow.
So, like,
Wow.
does your playbook address like how
Mhm.
steps you can use to validate that the information it's giving back is correct?
Mhm. Yeah, it absolutely does. It actually talks about that in several places. And there's a foundation section that really just kind of talks about those kind of things, the things you need to look out for, and the fact that it doesn't replace your own expertise. And then in each of the prompts, it talks about some of the failure modes. That one's almost always in there. If you're doing something with data, it could make up something. And it also talks about, part of the a workflow would be, if you don't want it to make up some data, you provide it to them. So if the New England Journal article is something that's part of this process, you would actually upload that article, say, hey, you can only pull from this data. That doesn't mean it's not going to hallucinate, but at
Mm.
least you kind of minimize some of that. Again, like anything else, you need to look at what the output is, use your own expertise and say, okay, yeah, this is correct, right? Or what the way they're using this data, way it pulled the data is still correct. So you do have to be careful with that. And the book does talk a lot about those failure modes and those validation points that you need to make sure that you go through. And I think it's like anything else. Once you kind of start, it seems like, wow, this is a lot, right? It's like I can't just ask it a question and take it for granted. But the more you do something, the more you get used to how it's,
Mm.
outputting, and you just know what that failure mode is. The one you mentioned, Mary, is kind of the most common one. Hey, find me a reference, and it just makes it up, right? Because it's
Really?
in this mode of like, I want to please you, so I'm going to make this up for you. And
High achiever.
I see that with my newsletter. I see almost every newsletter as I use AI to research things, and I always go to the citation, and I'll come back and go, "This doesn't exist. You made this up." And I go, "Oh, yeah, you're right. I did." And it's you just have to play that game a little bit with AI to make sure that it does stay on task. One of the nice things though about an enterprise, if you're working, behind a firewall, is you can tell it like no external data, only what I provide you. And actually a lot of the prompts that I've written in the book actually are written that way. So that like again, if one of them is a journal club, the first thing that popped in my head is like if you're preparing for a journal club, like it's your turn to do it this month, and you've got a journal article, there's a prompt in there that says, "Hey, upload the journal article. I'm doing a journal club. These are the things that we're trying to do with our journal club. Do not use any exterior sources. Just this. Come up with questions for me to ask, the main points, all that kind of stuff, right?" And if you do it in that kind of environment, the hallucinations are much lower and the risk is also much lower. It's when you're asking more general, like I'm doing, hey, go out and find me something that's, regulatory with AI. That's one of the sections in the newsletter. It comes up with stuff, but sometimes it just makes it up, right? And I have to make sure like this is not something I'm going to publish if it's a made up, article.
Wow. I mean, one of my things I'm kind of taking away from all this is, so many people say AI is going to make us all dumb. Um, but
Mhm.
I kind of feel like it's not that
Mhm.
way. I mean, we look at it, it's not just about saving time. I think it's about you're developing better thinkers because you're you're getting like leadership experience because you're having to lead this your coworker, like Karen Stevens called it, your coworker, right?
Mhm.
Um, and how they do their project you're assigning to them. I mean, and giving them better judgment, and again creating better leaders.
Yeah.
So
I
I
like
mean,
to
that's
think of
I think one
AI
of
as
my
a
big
I
takeaways.
like to think of it as a thought partner. Coworker's good too, but it's really, you know, the efficiencies are there. We can see that, right? And when it's done right, we can see that it does save time. Even just something as simple as voice to text that we talked about, it can save a ton of time. But it doesn't take away, all the things that make us human, right? So it's a great thought partner. If you set it up correctly, it can really, really save you a lot of time and make it more efficient, so that you can do the things that you're probably really being paid to do, which is if you're an MSL, you're being paid to be out in the field talking to people, not sit in front of your laptop,
Yeah.
trying to enter everything. And we all know Friday afternoons, that's what the MSLs do, right? They have to put in everything they did that week into the CRM, and that takes a lot of time.
It does. It does. Yes, that is the vein of the MSL existence, I think, is administrative work, whether it's Viva or any of those other things. You
Yeah, just
sound really,
follow up
you have
emails.
a lot of you have a lot of confidence in this. Talk to us. And I know, I don't, I know that Mary mentioned your company and where you are. Tell us more about that. Triple Helix strategy. So if someone were to want to get started with AI governance, tell us what you do and how you could help support it.
Yeah, it starts with kind of auditing what's needed, right? Every company is going to be a little bit different, depending on where they are in their product and other things. You can't just say one size fits all. So I think that it starts with, hey, what is it that's needed? And then it really goes from there to say you can't change everything at once. You can't say, hey, you have these 47 different processes in your medical affairs department. Let's automate them all or let's make it all AI. No, I think you start with the low hanging fruit, right? You start with things that are really easy. You make sure that it's something that is really going to, change the way you're doing things and make it better, but it's also low hanging fruit. You create a pilot, you work out the tweaks, you work out all the little issues that are happening, you train everybody on it before you move on to the next one. So it's like eating an elephant, right? It's one bite at a time. It's not the whole thing in one bite. You definitely need to take it piece by piece. But it starts with understanding the processes. And like I said, every company is going to be a little bit different on what they do and how they do things, and where the low hanging fruit's going to be. If you're pre-launch, there's just different needs than somebody with a 10-year-old product, and maybe has 5 or 6 different products, and whatever their teams are running pretty efficiently. What you're going to tackle there is going to be a little bit different. But putting those guardrails and governance in place, it starts with that after the audit. Yeah, I think what a lot of the leaders, right, the executive leaders are looking for is not so much to find a way not to use it. I think they see it just like we do, which is, wow, this is a great tool, but how do we do that? How do we implement it without risk? And what we also want ROI. And so you don't want to just nilly willy kind of say, let's do this, let's do that. Once you kind of audit and figure out, okay, where's the low hanging fruit here? And if we can go back to the executives and say, hey, you know what, if we implement these 2 things and we save again everybody an hour a week, and that means more for what you're paying them to do, that resonates, right? And that's what they're looking for essentially. They're really looking for a safe way to do it right, doesn't set them up for a compliance issue, or data getting out there that they don't want out there. But it's not creating more work; it's actually making it better for everybody. And that's a nuance that every company is just slightly different.
Hmm.
I have like a million takeaways. Um, but I think the one thing that I'm really interested in getting, and I want to share it with everybody who's watching or listening, is about the Medical Affairs AI Playbook.
Mhm.
Um, where and how can somebody get their hands on it? Where can I get my hands on
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
You can go to my website, triplehelixstrategy.com. And then
Okay.
in the navigation, one of them is AI Playbook. It actually, the whole page actually talks about what's all in there, who's it for, how to use it. There's a couple sample pages that you can look at, and then there's a button to purchase as well. So it's all right there. Happy to have people email me, and I can actually, give them answers to their questions as well. So email me at PMinne, PIMMINNE at triplehelixstrategy.com. I can answer those questions there too.
And connect with Paul on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Paul, Paul, like you would think, Minne, Minne,
S-
and follow his newsletter, which I just got a newsletter this morning.
Ooh, yeah, I need to sign up for that. So,
Yeah, I'll
Paul,
send you the link.
before we, this has been great discussion, and really appreciate the conversation. It's definitely been informative for me. And I can't wait to check out the playbook. one of the things you mentioned in your last takeaway was around the impact maybe on headcount, right? Or that is a perception or fear, I guess. Even you were talking about executives that are looking at this as an efficiency and enablement. Um, what about how do you help set proper expectations for organizations as far as how much impact that AI will actually have and freeing up someone's time potentially, et cetera. And I'm just doing this I'm thinking about this from the medical affairs perspective, right? There's always this challenge of um, oftentimes the CEO was a salesperson in the very beginning. They called on 15 people a day. You go and you start reporting on some of these things, and so in their mind is, oh, so we should be able to double the amount of people that we go see or things like that. And we all know that medical affairs, it just doesn't, it's not a cold call. You've got multiple states, it could be rare disease, et cetera. So how do we think about that as far as in those conversations, although it is beneficial, it certainly is, it's augmented intelligence is how I refer to it, versus artificial. How do you have those conversations, and what suggestions would you give around that topic?
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest one is to not have those conversations. I think as an MSL director, you should be bringing that up with your boss, right? That should be
That's what I
something.
meant.
Yeah,
Yes,
you
yes,
should
with
be
leadership.
proactive about it, saying, "Hey, my one, we're all afraid or we're going to lose our jobs eventually, but hey, let me show you what how the positives with this." So, a couple of ways to think about it is, you can actually kind of do the reverse psychology and say, you know what, this is actually preserving our jobs because there's things that AI can't do, right? It can't read the eye roll of the KOL. It can't read, the sarcasm. It can't read the room, right? And MSLs can do that. So you can't just say, oh, we don't need MSLs anymore. We'll just do AI on demand MSL. Like that's not a realistic solution. Maybe in 20 years, but it's not today, right? But it is plausible. And I know that there are leaders out there who are looking at it as, well, maybe we can, you know, decrease the size of this team because AI is making it more efficient. And as an MSL leader, that's what I mean by you have to stay ahead of that and reframe that as no, we don't want to lose our 10 MSLs because if we do, again, they're seeing one more KOL a week. And now if you were to get rid of two or three of them, well, there
Hmm.
goes all those KOLs that we don't see anymore on a regular basis. Because to your point, it's not, we can't see 15 a day. At least, normal day we can't, right? Maybe at a congress or something. But most of the time, we're flying around, we're driving several hours,
Yeah.
we're, whatever. It's just so you look at it from that perspective, you have to frame it as, hey, you know what? But if we do all this stuff with AI, I'm actually freeing up my team to do the things that we're actually paying them to do
Mm.
instead of sitting home Friday afternoon and typing all afternoon. They're seeing maybe they're having one more lunch with one more KOL. At least that's possible. Or at least maybe they're working on that project that has been sitting in the to-do box forever. And we're finally making, headway on that. I think that's how you have to frame it. And at the end of the day, it maybe you don't go from 10 to 15, but you preserve the 10 that you have. And I think
Mm.
that's the mindset you have to think about is we're at least not going to lose headcount, but we may not gain it either.
I think
I
so.
100% agree
Yeah.
with that because if you go oh, sorry. If you go back to, um, what MSLs looked like in 2004, for example,
Mhm.
to what they look like today, how different their functions are today, it's all been a part of this evolution.
Mhm.
Um, and it's just so much their role is so multifactorial compared to one-dimensional as it was back then, and I think technology has allowed that to happen.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, I I have 0 concern that it's going to eliminate MSLs, um, or reduce them the way that some of these, uh, people think that it will.
Yeah.
I think it will eliminate the MSLs that do not adapt to it. do not incorporate AI into their practice, right? Because I think that there will be more expectations of being able to do, Paul, what you mentioned, the job that we really have hired you to do and do that really well. And so you're either going to have a increased workload that you can't handle because you're not leveraging it in certain ways or making the impact, and the company's not experiencing that. You're not communicating it well, any of those types of things. So I think those that are resistant to it are going to could potentially get left behind because of this transition, this evolution, if you will, that medical affairs is in right now, and it's going to look completely different in 5 years. I'm very confident that will be the case.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And I think we're about at time. So just as a closing, I would say, the MSL role is still expanding, and there's going to be more and more of them. There's a lot more biotechs out there, a lot of startups that are, MSLs are getting out there earlier and earlier. But I think the difference is, instead of having these massive teams of 30 or 40,
Yeah.
you're maybe only going to have 10 or 12 for all the reasons that you talked about, which is, it's just, we're paying you to be in the field. AI can handle all this other stuff. We can get the SOPs, the governance, and all that around it to make sure that we're not at risk for anything that we're recording in the field or whatever it is we do. But at the end of the day, the role is still going to be there, and there's still going to be more and more MSLs that are added on. It's just that the teams, I don't think, are going to be quite as big as they
Yeah.
used to be.
Fascinating conversation, Paul.
We solved all the problems.
I mean, honestly, and I mean, you're a testimony to evolution of throughout the years, right? I think in the intro mentioned 30 years in medical affairs industry, which is fast, almost 30 years, right? But seeing from completely med info reactive to all this evolution of the value in being a strategic thought partner. And I think what you just shared with us earlier, at triplehelixstrategy.com, the Medical Affairs Playbook, AI Playbook, is going to be a tool that could be utilized to really help organizations learn how to apply and advance this in the field. So thanks so much for sharing your thoughts, practical ways of implementation, and then your thoughts about where things are headed. Really appreciate the time. So thanks for joining.
Thank you. I really appreciated being here. I really had a good time. Thanks, guys.
Well, that wraps up another episode of MSL Lead Chronicles, where leaders learn from leaders. Thanks so much for joining Paul and Mary and I for a casual conversation. And just remember that leaders don't develop in isolation. Leaders learn from leaders. Come join the journey with us. Until next time, lead well.